It might seem crazy, so thank you everyone for coming here this evening. I really appreciate you being here, and I hope and pray that you're going to get something out of tonight. I've been really looking forward to this for a long time, and I'm really glad that you can all be here. I'd like to start by praying and just giving this time over to God. Thanks, God, for bringing us all here and for being here with us. Thanks for who you are and for who you've made us as. And I pray that tonight will just be a good night where we can, have some fun, but also learn a bit more about who you are and how you've made us as well, and understand what it is that life looks like. Amen. Cool. So first up, what I've got is a little video that I found that I think works for tonight quite well. So we'll start off with that.
Who am I? Am I what I do? An artist? An accountant? A teacher? A mother? Or am I what I've achieved? An honor student? An MVP? A winner? Am I the things I've done right? Or am I defined by the things I've done wrong? Am I a saint? A sinner? What about what others think of me? Am I all of these things? None of these things? Who am I? How I identify myself determines how I approach life. If I am what I do, I'll always need to do more and achieve more to find my value. If I am what others say, I'll always try to please people instead of my Heavenly Father. But if I listen to who God says I am and embrace His identity in me, I'll find the freedom to live out all He has planned for me. God calls me His child. He says I am wise and restored, that I'm a brand new creation in Christ. I am chosen and holy and blameless before God. He calls me His masterpiece. I am loved by God. He says I am made complete through the grace and mercy of Jesus, my Savior. And when I see myself the way God sees me, I walk with confidence because I trust the one who answers the question, who am I?
Awesome. So I got that up because this album is part of a series that is all about this idea of seeking and understanding identity. And my page is falling down. There we go. They're all falling down. We'll get there. Okay. So something I'd like to spend a little bit of time on is just explaining how this fits into everything else, because there's been a few things that have been floating around and it's been confusing to most people. So I thought I'd clear things up a bit. Back in 2014, I wrote this album called Living. By the time I finished it, I had come up with an idea to write a 4-album series based around 4 central ideas of God's character: life, love, light, and truth. So this first one was life, there we go, and it was called Living, this album. The original idea was to write 1 album a year and release each album the year after it was written. So I started back in 2014. I kept up with the writing part, but not the releasing part. So in 2015, I wrote the album God's Love Song, which is already ready to go as soon as I've finished with this one, which is why I've been impatient to finish it. And then this year I've been writing the 3rd album, which I think is going to be called Shine the Light. But I've still got a fair bit of work to do on it because it's already September and there are only 5 or 6 songs written. At the same time as this, that I was writing the first album, I was starting to write a book called Son, Brother, Bride. The basic idea is that it's exploring the identity of men as the sons of the Father, the brothers of Jesus, and the bride of Christ. How our identity is found and inherently tied into God's identity. Slide. It'll come. I've currently finished the first draft of that book and trying to get it to a state of being finished. These things take time. There we go. Created by the Father, called by the Son, connected through the Spirit. Originally, the idea was to call this 4-album project the 4 Pillars, because of these 4 pillars of who God is and who he calls us to be. But more recently, when I was looking towards this album launch and looking at the name again, wasn't particularly liking it. I toyed with the word cause instead of pillars, but it didn't really work. Next slide. So I got out the old thesaurus and put in core, because I knew that that was the right idea, just not the right wording. And one of the words that was there was the word crux. It fitted perfectly. When you're talking about the crux of something, you're talking about the most important point, the heart or the core of the matter. But it's also the Latin for cross. So this was the word that I used for the project that spanned over 4 albums, but I also realised that it was bigger than just the albums. That's where it started, not where it ended. The basic idea of these albums was in seeking identity. Seeking the identity of God, of each other, and of ourselves. And the basic message of the albums is that we can understand and know this more at the meeting point of these 4 ideas. Life, love, light, and truth. But this idea of seeking identity was much bigger than the albums. It was something that I was already exploring in the book that I was writing, and I knew that it was very much a core issue for me that I wanted to build more around. So while the Crux project is the 4 albums, Crux in itself is a much bigger idea, a journey where together we are seeking identity. Short version for those who tuned out. Next one. There you go. So Living is the name of the album. The Crux project is the 4-album cycle it's a part of, and Crux is an ongoing idea that encapsulates the whole thing and who knows what else. Yeah, that is it for now. And Josh, we have a song. So one of the things that I love to do is to find people that are doing cool things and help them do cool things. So one of the guys that's helping me out tonight is Josh, and he's also a songwriter and musician. So he's going to come up and show us one of his songs before we get into the album itself. So let's welcome him up.
Everything he owned.
ask the rest of the band up and get into the main part of the album. Cool. So, there's a verse that I've got kind of highlighted for each of the songs here. So this first one is a verse from Matthew chapter 10, verse 39, that says, "If you cling to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for me, you will find it." And interesting thing there, the word it uses for life there is suke. It's Greek, because why the heck not? And for those that were around for a couple of years back actually now, I talked about this word among others, and I talked about how this word actually is talking about our personality, about the things that make us unique, about the things that often is kind of how we define ourselves and how we say this is who we are, this is who we are. And so it's saying if you cling to these ideas of who you are, then you will lose it. But if you give up these ideas of who you are, then you will find your identity, you will understand that more, which I found interesting. And I thought related into this quite well. This album has been something that I've been working on for quite a while. I wrote the entire album in 2014, but it's taken until now to get to you for various reasons. But one thing that the length of time has meant is that the message and the meaning of each of these songs has had that much more time to sink in. And I've had that much more time to understand what God's trying to say through their words. Because these aren't really songs that I've written, in a sense. I'm not the creator. I'm merely a discoverer and venturer, constantly finding new treasures that God has left for me that I believe He wants me to show to other people as well. And I'm letting you know right now, each of these songs incorporate so many different ideas, stories and concepts that I'm not going to be able to cover all of it. I can only relate a little what I think is the core of it. But if you're interested, there's always more to tell, and I'm always happy to share. There are also a few in here that are spoken word pieces, because sometimes that seems to be better. Next verse. "Remember that you were at that time separated from Christ, alienated from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers to the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. But now in Christ Jesus, you who once were far off have been brought near by the blood of Christ. So then you are no longer strangers and aliens, but you are fellow citizens with the saints and members of the household of God." This first song is called "Drown Me." There's a series by Ted Decker called "The Circle," where he talks about this idea of drowning, that through this act, these characters in the book were made new and reborn. I really like that idea, and the idea of surrender, so that's part of what I've tried to capture here. Another element is the distinction and interplay between both saint and sinner, life and death. For the longest time, I condemned myself and thought of myself in the worst of ways. I considered myself dead, not worth anything, because of the things that I had done or said or thought, or even because of things that had been said or done to me. But that's not what God wanted for me. He called me out as saint, not sinner, alive, not dead, as a warrior, not a monster. But that wasn't because of anything that I had done or could do. It was because of what He had already done. What was asked of me was to surrender to His love, to let myself be immersed in Him. That's what I am, no one else to blame, no one else who came even close to where I stand. No forgiveness for me, I'm not deserving. I'm a monster, but you can't see way down deep inside. Yes, that's when He hides in me. I can't take this. Gotta give up now, there's no way out but you. You're speaking to my life, saying it can't be me. Say it can only be you that guides me, you that saves me. And I'm with you. Now there's nothing else that I can do. And I'm swimming in your waters. Your love, it is more than less than time. Your embrace in this place I'm supposed to be. Your love drowns me. I'm a saint, I am made new. The old's not here, no shame, no fear anymore. You've won for me a victory, yes, it's glorious. I'm a warrior, I'm dangerous, so you better watch out, because you're about to see this life new. It's begun, see what he's done in me. It's radical, not because of me. You know me, ever be you that guides me, you that saves me. And I live in you. Now there's nothing else that I can do. And I'm swimming in your waters. Your love, it is more than less than time. Your grace in this place I'm supposed to be. Your love drowns me. I've never felt more alive. It's only when I die that I can feel this alive. And I've never felt more alive. No, I've never felt more alive. And it's only when I die that I can feel this alive. And I've never felt more alive. No, I've never felt more alive. It's only when I die to say that I can feel this alive. And I die feeling there's nothing else that I can do. And I die swimming in your waters. Your love, it is more than less. I die your grace in this place I'm supposed to be. And I die living you. And there's nothing else that I can do. And I die your grace in this place I'm supposed to be. Oh, and I die living you. Nothing else I can do. And your love drowns me. Why are you so polite with me? Always saying, yes sir, and that's right sir, but never doing a thing I tell you. These words I speak to you are not mere additions to your life, homeowner improvements to your standard of living. They are foundation words, words to build a life on. If you work the words into your life, you are like a smart carpenter, dug deep and laid the foundation of his house on bedrock. When the river burst its banks and crashed against the house, nothing could shake it. It was built to last. But if you just use my words in Bible studies and don't work them into your life, you're a dumb carpenter who built a house but skipped the foundation. When the swollen river came crashing in, it collapsed like a house of cards. It was a total loss. Luke chapter 6, verses 46 to 49. audio. Like I said, this album was written back in 2014. As some of you may know, that year I was doing Impart. For those of you that aren't aware, Impart is a one-year course that is part Bible college, part young adult leadership training, part intensive community, and part spiritual formation. It was incredible and awesome and fantastic and life-changing, but also incredibly challenging. In reality, this is actually the Impart album. It's putting everything that I learned from that year into song. We had these intensives, 9-day long intensives, 4 of them spaced throughout the year. The first of those was summer school, and because they like to grow and stretch us, they thought they'd spring on us a little excursion to test our fears, and they always were like, "Oh, we're going out on this excursion." They didn't really tell us what it was. They were just like, "Let's bring it on you." That excursion was paintball. Disclaimer: I had never been to paintball before and never wanted to. I found no joy in hurting others, nor in being hurt. But I figured I was in it now, I may as well try and enjoy it. So I got into the gear, got the briefing, headed out into the field. I was keeping pretty well uncovered, but it wasn't too long before I got shot in the hip. Sorry to those who quite enjoy paintball and find it easy, but to me it felt like someone had put the Cruciatus curse on me. I held out as best as I could for the rest of the game, running on automatic, just trying not to get hit again. Then finally it ended. I managed to get over to where they called us to, but after I sat down, I started shaking uncontrollably. I started crying, my nose was running a bit, I could barely speak. I was an absolute mess. Thankfully, I had some great people there who took great care of me. I didn't really know what was going on, but I heard words like panic attack being used. At the time, I wasn't able to make much sense of what was happening, but I did know that this was exactly the sort of thing that I had feared. I had a fear of pain, and so I tended to bubble wrap myself. That fear was being tested. Because again, this wasn't how God wanted me to live. He didn't want me to live bound and beholden to my fears. Rather, he wanted me to live trusting in him and remembering that he is bigger and stronger than any fear that I may have. Jesus uses a parable that I read to you earlier where he talks about 2 men who built their houses on 2 very different foundations. But only the one who built their house on the rock had the house left standing when the storm came. What is your foundation in life? Because if it's not God, then it will fall. The only question is when. Shaking, quaking, in the vibration. Move, can't talk, got no control. Just crying out, got nothing left to lose. But this test of fear is not to bring me down, but to bring you near. Build me up. Oh, you are my foundation, and when I get knocked down, you stay standing. You're my solid ground. Through all the desperation, you hold on to me. Even when I have nothing, you have been there. And you are my foundation. I'm alone, reading, sitting on a train headed home. It's been a long time since I've been here. Not sure how far I can roam, but no one in here is not to break me down, but to bring you near and build me up. Oh, you are my foundation. When I get knocked down, you stay standing. You're my solid ground. Through all the desperation, have been there, and you are my foundation. Do not forget this one thing, dear friends. With the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day. The Lord is not slow in keeping his promises. Some understand slowness. Instead, he is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 8 and 9. And again from Isaiah, I am the Lord. In its time, I will do this with you. This was actually the first song that I wrote on the album. In our first in-part intensive, we had a bit of a retreat time at a beach in Sandal Tops. I found this little quiet spot off to the side on a rock ledge, and right where I was sitting there was this little drip that was constantly going. You could tell it had been going for a long time because it had worn away the rock where it hit, and there was vegetation growing up in the channel where it ran down the rock. And what struck me suddenly was that this drip and the ocean were the same thing, water, just in different forms at a different scale. And I thought that a very similar thing can be true of God sometimes. There are times when he is like the ocean, infinitely powerful and lovely and wild and bigger than our comprehension. But there are other times when he acts more like the drip. I knew that there were places in my life where he had been slowly dripping away, changing and affecting me subtly but permanently. God is both the ocean and the drip. Sometimes we can only let him be the drip and wonder why we don't feel his power in our lives. Other times we only let him be the ocean and find it hard to be close and personal with a God so vast and powerful. This song is about bringing them both together. There's a drip from the Lord dripping away my storm heart, and I know this drip nourishes me and helps me to grow. But there's more to water than just a drip. Wind, take me to the place where I lose my grip. The Spirit calls me to the shore where I stand and see all my soul longs for. The ocean so wide and deep, so love, your power is more than I dream of. more than I dreamed of. Life of the dream without the dream. I am lost at sea without the ocean. How can your power protect me? I'm too lost to not believe that both of you. Without the dream, I'm lost at sea without the ocean. How can your power protect me? I'm too lost to not believe that both of you. The Spirit calls me to the shore where I stand. All my soul must fall the ocean. So I'm deep as your love. Your power is more than I dream of. I cry out to the Lord. I plead for the Lord's mercy. I pour out my complaints before him and tell him all my troubles. When I am overwhelmed, you alone know the way that I should turn. Wherever I go, my enemies have set traps for me. I look for someone to come and help me, but no one gives me a passing thought. No one will help me. No one cares a bit what happens to me. Then I pray to you, O Lord. I say you are my place of refuge. You are all that I really want in life. Hear my cry, for I am very low. Rescue me from my persecutors, for they are too strong for me. Bring me out of prison so that I can thank you. The godly will crowd around me, for you are good to me. Psalm 142. One thing that this world is easily obsessed around is the idea of more. We know that God is supposed to fill all of our needs to be enough for us. But our idea of what we need and God's idea of what we need can often be quite different. Particularly because the physical world seems so present and close and immediate, it's easy to feel distant from God because he doesn't have that physical body. This is something that I've really struggled with, particularly in the area of love and relationships. One of the first things that we are told is that God is love. But it wasn't until much more recently that I started to wrap my head around the idea of him pursuing me and loving me in a really personal and intimate way. And so I chased after relationships, hoping to find a love that I thought was missing. But because I wasn't looking to God for that love first, because I was asking something from people that they couldn't give, it never worked out. So this song is about my struggle to try and let God just be enough. Help me today to find a way to let you in, to fill my heart right from the start with your love. I know that I've tried so many times to give, but if it's not close to you, Well, then it keeps falling through, 'cause it can never be enough. And I've known this for so long, so why can my heart not tag along? Just let you be enough. And I've given myself to people and things, even when I don't know, they're just there to string me along with that fake love. And I've known that they can't measure up to you, but how can I change it? So what can I do to just let you be enough? And I've known this for so long, so why can my heart not tag along? Just let you be enough. Just let you be enough. And my God is the greatest thing. My God is the greatest in my heart. Oh, my God, you loves me. Be enough. Be enough for me. Be enough for me. I've known this for so long, so I can let her more time alone. Just let you be enough. Just let you be enough. Spoken word one. Come in, I'll tell you a story. Sit down, for this is going to take a while. I'm sorry if it's sad from time to time, but hopefully it will end with a smile. For there was this man, perhaps like you, unless you're a woman, that is, who knew in no uncertain terms that the mud was bad, that that's just the way it is. And he knew why. Of course he did. It wasn't just a matter of say-so. It was dirty and messy and quite unbecoming. It stuck to you and smelled worse than Aunt Jo. So he stayed away from the mud. Yes, sirree. He didn't want any of that monstrosity. And that, my darlings, is where the story would have ended, if not for a little thing called curiosity. Curiosity, you see, can be good or bad. It's a little whispering in the ear, wondering what it is that things are like that you haven't had the chance to be near. And when these things are jelly roller coasters or waterfalls, then that's perfectly fine, you see. But when it is something like mud, that's when it becomes dangerous, unfortunately. You see, this man John, for that was his name, started to wonder how it was mud did look. And so he decided to walk one day to see something. A glance was all he took. But curiosity is never sated with just a glance. No, it must always have more. And so John found himself getting closer to the mud, though he knew quite well what was in store. One day he got so close to touch it, then he did. And he didn't quite know what to do, because people would see and people would know, and John didn't want that, would you? And so he did his best to wash that bit off. It wasn't really too hard.
But he still kept worrying that there was some left somewhere, and so he started putting up his guard. Yet he kept going back to the mud, starting to go deeper and deeper, and each time trying to wash himself off, but the danger got steeper and steeper. Cleaning himself got harder as well, especially in those hard-to-reach bits. And the worry got worse as he thought, what about the smell? And I couldn't take the hits. For he knew what people thought of mud, knew that he would be cast out, never to see his friends or his family again. And so he tried to turn about. He tried to stay away from the mud, knew it, but that was easier said than done. For he found quite quickly that he couldn't stop. The worst of him, it seemed, had won. So he gave up. He went back into the mud up to his neck. And he probably would have drowned one day. He was really a total wreck. But hold on. Wait up, that's not the end. I told you it's not all bad. Because along came another man who saw through John and the fake cleanness he had. And John saw him too, and for a moment thought that it was the end. But then the man smiled and said, relax, John. I'm your friend. You have tried and tried to wash yourself clean, but it was never about your look. It's what's inside that needs to be new. That's what's been the hook. But now I'm here, and I have living water that washes the inside. You'll be a new man. The old will be gone. You won't ever again need to hide. But John exclaimed, how can that be? How can I ever be clean? I've been in the mud up to my neck. Don't you know what that means? I'm dirty, I'm messy, I'm brown, and what's worse, I stink. How can you pretend to like me? People would run away if they'd known what I'd done, and for good reason. Just leave me be. The man smiled, and somehow in that smile conveyed the pain that he felt for John. I know what it is to be in the mud, friend, he said, because I drowned in it so it would be gone. But it's still here, John shouted. I don't understand. What are you trying to say? Even if you did drown, if you did what you said, how would that make it go away? John, the man said, I know that you're hurting, but right now you need to trust me. It's only when I clean you that you can be truly new and free. The words sounded crazy like that of a madman, yet somehow John knew he spoke true. He didn't know why, he didn't know how, but he also knew there was nothing he could do. Okay, John said, do it. And he closed his eyes and raised his hands. A few moments passed and nothing happened. He opened his eyes. I don't understand. The man smiled again. It was annoying yet beautiful. I may be a miracle man, but how do you expect me to clean you when 2 feet in the mud you stand? But, John railed, you promised that you could fully clean me. Why does it matter where I stand if you can truly set me free? Yet even as he said the words, he knew that they didn't ring true. They made sense, perhaps, quite logical indeed, but that wouldn't help him pull through. Because all along it was his heart that had feared the rejection and the shame. It was the brain that had tried to cover it up, but he was tired of playing that game. And somehow, John knew that this man whom he had never met in his life before could set his heart free of that fear at last and give him new life forevermore. And that little spark, that glimmer of hope, that was what helped him then. He gave one hand to the man and then the other, and the man pulled him out again. Then the man washed him from head to toe. He felt so incredibly clean, more even than before he'd even touched the mud or before he'd ever seen. And the love that he felt from that man was incredible, powerful and strange. And slowly his fear ebbed away. His heart began to change. Many years have passed since then, and John is a brand new man. Not only that, but now he helps to make others new by helping them to understand. Because it's not that he never touched or saw the mud again, for it can't be thrown off overnight. But it was that hope and love had found a place inside him that burned bright. And while he still stumbles along the way, the man's never too far. And he always smiles. He always loves, no matter how muddy you are. That's the end of this story, dear folks, and I hope that you've come to see it's not a story of mud and despair, but a story of hope and love for you and for me. Yes. It's probably going to fall down many times throughout the night. We'll see how we go. I waited patiently
to help me, and he turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the pit of despair, out of the mud and the mire. He set my feet on solid ground and steadied me as I walked along. Psalm 40, verse 1 to 2. I just call that one the story, and it's drawn very much from my own experience, but I think it applies across to many people and situations. The running style also reminds me of little Dr. Seuss, a bit of fun. The mud that I refer to in the story, in some senses, is just sin in general. For me, though, it has a more specific meaning, because it's particularly referring to my struggles with porn, with fantasy, with lust. These are things that I've struggled with for a very long time, and while I can't pretend to say that I'm completely free of them, I'm doing much better than I once was. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but I think the turning point for me was something called Valiant Man. It was a group run by Troy, the pastor here, that talked honestly about these sorts of issues, and it was the first time that I'd ever been able to talk about it in a group setting like that. And it was the first time that I realised that this wasn't just a me thing. Because one of the biggest lies that you can believe with this sort of sin, and with many, many others as well, is that you're alone in it, and that no one else could understand. That they condemn or spurn you, or hate you, or cast you out because of what you've done or seen or said. But that's just not true. And something that I've seen disproven time and time again. Whatever you're going through, you're not alone. To help in understanding some of these issues, there's a video that I've got in here that I found a little while ago that I think is kind of awesome at talking about this sort of stuff. It's talking about addiction in general, and the example it uses is heroin addiction.
What causes?
But it applies across to all of them.
What causes, say, heroin addiction? This is a really stupid question, right? It's obvious, we all know it. Heroin causes heroin addiction. Here's how it works. If you use heroin for 20 days, by day 21, your body would physically crave the drug ferociously because there are chemical hooks in the drug. That's what addiction means. But there's a catch. Almost everything we think we know about addiction is wrong. If you, for example, break your hip, you'll be taken to a hospital and you'll be given loads of diamorphine for weeks or even months. Diamorphine is heroin. It's in fact much stronger heroin than any addict can get on the street because it's not contaminated by all the stuff drug dealers dilute it with. There are people near you being given loads of deluxe heroin in hospitals right now, so at least some of them should become addicts. But this has been closely studied. It doesn't happen. Your grandmother wasn't turned into a junkie by her hip replacement. Why is that? Our current theory of addiction comes in part from a series of experiments that were carried out earlier in the 20th century. The experiment is simple. You take a rat and put it in a cage with 2 water bottles. One is just water, the other is water laced with heroin or cocaine. Almost every time you run this experiment, the rat will become obsessed with the drugged water and keep coming back for more and more until it kills itself. But in the 1970s, Bruce Alexander, a professor of psychology, noticed something odd about this experiment. The rat is put in the cage all alone. It has nothing to do but take the drugs. What would happen, he wondered, if we tried this differently? So he built Rat Park, which is basically heaven for rats. It's a lush cage where the rats would have colored balls, tunnels to scamper down, plenty of friends to play with, and they could have loads of sex. Everything a rat about town could want. And they would have the drugged water and the normal water bottles. But here's the fascinating thing. In Rat Park, rats hardly ever use the drugged water. None of them ever use it compulsively. None of them ever overdose. But maybe this is a quirk of rats, right? Well, helpfully, there was a human experiment along the same lines, the Vietnam War. 20% of American troops in Vietnam were using a lot of heroin. People back home were really panicked because they thought there would be hundreds of thousands of junkies on the streets of the United States when the war was over. But a study followed the soldiers home and found something striking. They didn't go to rehab. They didn't even go into withdrawal. 95% of them just stopped after they got home. If you believe the old theory of addiction, that makes no sense. But if you believe Professor Alexander's theory, it makes perfect sense. Because if you're put into a horrific jungle in a foreign country where you don't want to be, and you could be forced to kill or die at any moment, doing heroin is a great way to spend your time. But if you go back to your nice home with your friends and your family, it's the equivalent of being taken out of that first cage and put into a human rat park. It's not the chemicals, it's your cage. We need to think about addiction differently. Human beings have an innate need to bond and connect. When we are happy and healthy, we will bond with the people around us. But when we can't, because we're traumatized, isolated, or beaten down by life, we will bond with something that gives us some sense of relief. It might be endlessly checking a smartphone, it might be pornography, video games, Reddit, gambling, or it might be cocaine. But we will bond with something because that is our human nature. The path out of unhealthy bonds is to form healthy bonds, to be connected to people you want to be present with. Addiction is just one symptom of the crisis of disconnection that's happening all around us. We all feel it. Since the 1950s, the average number of close friends an American has been steadily declining. At the same time, the amount of floor space in their homes has been steadily increasing. To choose floor space over friends, to choose stuff over connection. The war on drugs we've been fighting for almost a century now has made everything worse. Instead of helping people heal and getting their life together, we have cast them out from society. We have made it harder for them to get jobs and become stable. We take benefits and support away from them if we catch them with drugs. We throw them in prison cells, which are literally cages. We put people who are not well in a situation that makes them feel worse and hate them for not recovering. For too long, we've talked only about individual recovery from addiction. But we need now to talk about social recovery, because something has gone wrong with us as a group. We have to build a society that looks a lot more like Rat Park and a lot less like those isolated cages. We are going to have to change the unnatural way we live and rediscover each other. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. This video is a collaboration with Johan Hari.
I think there's a lot in that would be really awesome if people understood it better. The opposite of addiction is connection. Yeah, I can say that that's very true from my own experience and from my own life, and I think it would be awesome if more people understood that, because then I think we wouldn't have as many problems and issues as we do. Yeah. Okay. But encourage one another daily, as long as it is called today, so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. Hebrews chapter 3, verse 13. Not long after the Valiant Man course that I was talking about before, a friend got me to start doing something that became a lot larger than he or I expected. All he asked me to do was to write down when I'd had a quiet time. I thought this is actually a great opportunity to get some information, so I wrote down what book of the Bible I was reading as well, if I spent time on a walk with God, if I had a catch up with someone, if I had fallen into temptation that day, and then just a progressive count of the days, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, etc. I didn't know how long it would go for, but I just started doing it. Later that year, I was at Easterfest, and I wrote down day 100. I never expected that it would go that far, because the way I am means that I tend to start a lot of things. I get lots of ideas and start lots of things, but then they kind of peter out very quickly. So if anything runs for even I keep going with something for even a whole year, I'm like, wow, accomplishment. That's awesome. But yeah, at 100 days, that's when I wrote this song called 100 Days. But the thing is, there plenty of days when I fell, and plenty of days that I still do. But I kept going back. I kept writing in another day, kept asking God to give me the strength to keep going. This Thursday just gone, I wrote down day 1000. Every day is a battle for me, but I hold tight to the knowledge that He has already won. He is already victorious, and He is always with me. Day one and sun, Okay. Day one and the sun is shining in my eyes. The fire's been ignited. Courageously I stand, it has begun. The war is raging, but I know you're taking this time to bring me closer with your hand. So I will fight for your love, as long as it is called today. Going forward with the sword of your word in our hands. And I know that without you, I can't face this fight. So for 100 days and onwards, I call you to help me through the night. Take forward what's more, stumbled over the starting blocks, fallen down already. What happened to that fight? 6, 12, and 15 follow, much the same way. But somewhere I find a desire to fight for your love, as long as it is called today. Going forward with the sword of your word in our hands. And I know that without you, I can't face this fight. So for 100 days and onwards, I call you to come, help me through the night. It's not the day that is the struggle, but the moment. The moment the devil longs to counterclaim. And the war, it never ends, but it doesn't have to overwhelm. Together we can courageously stand. Day 100, and I can't believe that I've made it this far. Though I've had a fair few falls along the way. But every single time you pick me up again, set my feet on solid rock, and so I stand, and together we stand. And fight for your love, as long as it is called today. Going forward with the sword of your word in our hands. And we know that without you, we can't face this fight. So for 100 days and onwards, we call you to come and help us fight for your love, as long as it is called today. Going forward with the sword of your word in our hands. And we know that without you, we can't face this fight. So for 100 days and onwards, we call you to come, help us through the night. Please come and help me through the night. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them. For the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 6. This song started with the story of Joshua and the power of words. Joshua is a story that I've always connected to, and it's a story of great courage. This is the verse that we remember in particular. Be strong and courageous, do not be afraid or discouraged, for I am with you and will never leave you nor forsake you. And that's a verse that is very much woven through this song, understanding that challenge of feeling afraid but being courageous, because it's about what you do, not how you feel. The other thing is the power of words. I've always been interested in the power and the meaning of words and names and such, and one day I decided to write my own language, as you do. But one of the first things that I puzzled over was what the name of the language would mean. I already had a name, I just popped into my head. Eventually, I got the little bits and pulled them apart and was like, this bit means this, and this bit means this, and this bit means this. And it came together and it meant the words of life and love. Because that's what I wanted to speak. And that's what I believe God speaks over us. As I mentioned before, this album is actually part of a 4-album cycle focused on exploring identity. The identity of God, but through that, our own identity as well. And I came up with 4 key ideas that I found throughout the Bible which God said that he was. Not things he said he was like when he compared himself to a shepherd or a rock, but actually was. God is life. God is love. God is light. And God is truth. Life, love, light, and truth. And I believe that at the intersection of these 4 ideas, we will come to a deeper understanding of the crux of God's identity and our own. 3, 4. I'm weak and afraid. You say be strong and courageous, but I'm scared and frightened. You say do not be afraid or discouraged, but you say that you'll never leave me nor forsake me. You will give me strength. You will always be there to love me, hold me, and guide me. And I know you speak the truth, 'cause your words are the words of life and love. I'm lost and broken. You say you will pick me up, but I'm weak and addicted. You say enjoy you more, but you say that you'll never leave me nor forsake me. You will give me strength. You will always be there to love me, hold me, and guide me. And I know you speak the truth, 'cause your words are the words of life and love. I am a sinner. You say that you love me, but I am alone. You say that you see me, but I am not worthy. You say that you trust me, but you say that you never leave me nor forsake me. You will give me strength. You will always be there to love me, hold me, and guide me. And I know you speak the truth, 'cause your words are the words of life and love. Given freely for me, and you are love on the cross for me, and you are light you say that you never leave me nor forsake me. You will give me strength. You will always be there to love me, hold me, and guide me. And I know this is the truth. 'Cause these are the words of life, and you will never leave me nor forsake me. You will give me strength. You will always be there to love me, hold me, guide me. And I know this is true. 'Cause your word, yes, well, these are the words of life and love.
What you deserve for who you simply are is praise and glory, honor, worship, and sacrifice, eternal devotion and service, and for what you've done, so much more. Yet what we gave was taunts and curses, mocking voices and spit, whips, nails, thorns, a cross, suffering, humiliation, and death. What I deserve for what I have done, thought, seen, and said, is to be locked away in a cold room with no way out and no way in, away from everyone and everything that I could hurt. Just me, left to my twistedness and wretchedness. Yet you gave forgiveness, complete and forever, mercy unjustified, grace unthinkable, love unfathomable. You welcome me home, make me a son, a prince in your kingdom. Give me new life, take away the old, and send me to those you love that I have heard or could hurt. But you trust me somehow, incredibly. You are the perfect judge, yet no one gets what they deserve. All I can say is thank you. All I can think is to remember. All I can do is to tell of this hope, this grace, this love, undeserved. For everyone has sinned. We all fall short of God's glorious standard, yet God, with undeserved kindness, declares that we are righteous. He did this through Christ Jesus when he freed us from the penalty for our sins. Romans chapter 3, verses 23 and 24. Thereafter, Hagar used another name to refer to the Lord who had spoken to her. She said, "You are the God who sees me." She also said, "Have I truly seen the one who sees me?" Genesis chapter 16, verse 13. The thought of my suffering and homelessness is bitter beyond words. I will never forget this awful time as I grieve over my loss. Yet still, I dare to hope, and I remember this. The faithful love of the Lord never ends. His mercies never cease. Great is his faithfulness. His mercies begin afresh each morning. I say to myself, the Lord is my inheritance. Therefore, I will hope in him. Lamentations chapter 3, verses 19 to 24. Because of the struggle that I faced with porn and fantasy and lust, a lot of shame weighed down on me. I tend to think the worst of myself. And there were two specific core beliefs that I realized I had that I was letting define me. The first was that I was unseen, unnoticed, unneeded. And the second is that I was unloved, unwanted, and uncared for. As soon as I realized that I had these beliefs about myself, I knew that I needed to get rid of them. But the thing is, whenever you're trying to get rid of a wrong or a bad belief, it's not enough to just remove it, because then it leaves an empty space, a vacuum, and it's too easy for it to go back, or something else comes in that's just as bad or worse. Instead, you need to intentionally replace it with something better, something good and true. You need to name it, identify what's wrong, shake it, get rid of the bad stuff, and replace it with something good. And when we do that, we can suddenly start to live lives that are a lot more free, because we're not living under those lies anymore. Just a speck on the horizon, just another dot in that long, a shadow, and nobody, and I don't matter. I am already the invisible man, unseen. It's who I am, unnoticed. That's the truth. Unneeded, I'm no one special. Please see me. I'm worse than rubbish or trash. You're opposed by my side and by my smell. Can't stand to be near me, won't even talk. I am the lonely man. Unloved is who I am. Unwanted, that's the truth. Uncared for, why would I be thankful? You are my son. You are the one I love. I see you, I know you, and I want to be with you. You are precious to me, and I made you to be amazing. So amazing. You are seen, you are loved, you are seen, you are loved, you are seen, you are loved. This next one I'm going to read. This poem was written out on the last Empire retreat. We had some retreat time at, I'm pretty sure it's called Parramatta Lake. And I went for a walk around it with my Bible, a notepad, and a pen. The Bible that we were given was this little pocket New Living Translation, which is why a lot of the verses you've seen have been in the New Living Translation. And also because it ties in with the name of the album. Bible, notepad, and a pen. And every now and then I'd stop, randomly open up the Bible to a random spot in the Bible and write a couple of lines that tied what I read with what I was seeing. Worked every single time. Crazily. I'll have the verses that each bit ties up to on the screen if you want to follow along. I sit under this tree, rough yet light and grand, and am reminded that our sins are rougher, his yoke lighter, and his love grander. Therefore my hope is in him. I sit near a great wall, offering its protection, and a pipe streaming water seeming to provide. But I remember that the Lord will protect me and sustain me more than I ever could. Therefore my hope is in him. I deviate from the main path and wonder for a moment if I will be lost. But I am reminded that the Lord always finds me, and I am never lost. Therefore my hope is in him. I stand here next to the murky water, coughing, feeling full of phlegm. But I am reminded that I am healed and cleansed by your power. Therefore my hope is in you. I sit and see beautiful lizards, hear melodious birds, and am captured by the lake's reflection. But I remember that your glory is greater than all of these could ever be. Therefore my hope is in you. I sit here so close to the beginning, yet I know it will also be the end. And I'm reminded that just as you have the power to give life, so you can take it away. Therefore my hope is in you. I sit in a great tree that has now fallen to the ground, and am reminded that no person is too great to escape your judgment. Therefore my hope is in you. I sit on the bank of a creek looking across at the other bank, and I am reminded of the separation between light and darkness, between you and what we were. Therefore my hope is in you. I sit on a high rock overlooking the water, and I know that even if I fell, your power could rescue me. Therefore my hope is in you. I arrive at a house, but I cannot linger here. I remember that you are my home and not any building or land. Therefore my hope is in you. I start to hurry, noting the time, but I almost miss the beautiful colours of spring. And I'm reminded that my attention and devotion to you must be pure and undivided. Therefore, my hope is in you. I come to a bridge and I sit down, the wood supporting me, but I know that it is only your strength which I can rely on. Therefore, my hope is in you. I sit near a swathe of vines, choking and surrounding trees and fences, and I'm reminded that the world may imprison us for what we do, that you give us grace and peace. Therefore, my hope is in you. I stand near a road, and the noise brings to mind thoughts of home, but I know that I must first build your house in my life on solid foundations. Therefore, my hope is in you. I rush forward, think I have much left to go, but I suddenly reach the end and I stop. For it is the beginning, but then it is not. The old is gone, the new has come. Therefore, my hope is in you.
The end has come, and I am saddened, for I know that the path ahead will be hard. But you remind me that your spirit and your words will never leave me. Therefore, my hope is in you. Jesus told this simple story, but they had no idea what he was talking about. So he tried again. I'll be explicit then. I am the gate for the sheep. All those others are up to no good. Sheep stealers, every one of them. But the sheep didn't listen to them. I am the gate. Anyone who goes through me will be cared for, will freely go in and out and find pasture. A thief is only there to steal and to kill and to destroy. But I came so that they can have real and eternal life, more and better life than they ever dreamed of. John chapter 10, verses 6 to 10 in the Message. It was the end of the year. I'd just come back from the last Impart retreat and was walking around Campbelltown with my ukulele. I wanted to write a song that would tie the album together because I'd written all the other songs. I just needed something to wrap it up. I knew I wanted something to tie into the theme of the album, which was life. If you come out of the Campbelltown Library and go right, then continue through a couple of intersections until you get to the one where Park Central is on your left, that's where I was walking. And right there in the middle of the road, there's a couple of trees that if you get there at a particular time, like I was, they're absolutely filled with birds, and they were noisy and constantly moving about, and there were so many of them. And I felt like I got a bit of a nudge from God saying, that's what life should be like. Maybe a little bit noisy, a little bit crazy, a little bit messy, but full of joy, full of movement, full of life. In the New Testament, there are actually two different words for life. One is talking about the physical life. Your heart's pumping, your blood's flowing, your brain's functioning. You're alive. But living is about much more than just being alive. The other word for life is talking about the life that God has for us. A spiritual life, a life to the full, an overflowing cup. And that word for life was actually first a verb, because it's about doing, it's about living. If something is not moving, growing, it's not alive. In the same way, if we are not moving and growing in our faith, then we are not spiritually alive. God gives us each the gift of abundant life. Are you living life to the full? This life is destined for, and not just in dreams. It might seem for you as well. It might seem like just a dream, but your father is gone as the story is end. You need to sing it, tell her what this life's about. It's about your love, about your grace, about how you are always in this place. You are my father, you are my brother, and never choose any other to live that way. And these words can never truly describe the life that you've given to us. And maybe we can show just a glimpse of the joy and the hope within us. We need to sing out and tell what this life's about. We need to sing out and tell you of what this life's about. It's about His love, about His grace, about how He is always in this place. He is our Father, He is our brother, and I never choose any other. It's about His love, about His grace, about how He is always in this place. He is our Father, He is our brother, and I never choose any other. So we can live like will. So we live like will. So we live like will. The disciples saw Jesus do many other miraculous signs in addition to the ones recorded in this book. But these are written so that you may continue to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing in Him, you will have life by the power of His name. John chapter 20, verses 30 to 31, and those are the last words of the book of John. As I mentioned before, these songs in this album... back on the page. There is so much more that I could still say, but I think I've already given you plenty to think about. Again, if you want to know more about these songs or the story behind them, I'm always happy to talk. But I've talked for too long already. As I mentioned before, these songs in this album are part of a much bigger picture. They're part of a 4-album cycle that is focused around seeking identity. The identity of God, of others, and of ourselves. And this first album has focused on the idea of life. The next album, called God's Love Song, which I've already written and I'm ready to go into, focuses on the idea of love. Then there are 2 more focusing on the ideas of light and of truth. If you want to find out more about this project, find the Facebook page or the website that I've made called Crux, C-R-U-X project. If you don't know how to find it, ask me, it's not too hard. I'll put it up on the Facebook event afterwards. Videos of tonight will also be available on the website after a little while. There are so many people that have been a part of making tonight happen that I want to thank. Firstly, I want to thank Campbelltown Church of Christ for giving us this venue to use. The people of this church have supported me in so many ways over the years, and it's been such a home for me. Something I actually want to make a note of. At the moment, this church is going through a sermon series around this topic of identity called Blurred. I did not plan that. That literally happened and I was like, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So I really encourage you to come along to one of the services tomorrow, either at 10 a.m. or 6 p.m. if you would like to explore this issue a little bit more. I also want to remind you that the proceeds from tonight are going towards helping the ministries of this church continue. I am not taking any money from tonight. This isn't going towards me, this is going towards this church, because I think that what this church is doing is really, really important. There are so many things that the people here want to do to help this community in different ways. One really awesome one that I think is really cool that I gave the money to last time is something called the Hub, which is where people who are struggling for money and all that sort of thing can come in, and there's a place where they can get emergency relief hampers or get food for really, really cheap. And that's been really, really great for a lot of people, and I know that that's been just expanding so much in what it's doing. It's going from food to clothing, and now we've got a community garden happening out there, and I don't even know how much it's going to grow over the next little while. It's just expanding ridiculously. It's just one of the things that's happening here. It's awesome. Yeah, I want to help that continue to see more lives changed and transformed, as I know so many have been already. Secondly, I want to thank Jess. You might have seen an image. If you can continue over to the next one, it should go just blank. Yay! If you could turn the floodlights down, then hopefully you'll see it a bit better. So this image was painted by Jess Graham. Some of you may know her. She is an awesome painter. This is the original. So this is essentially the album cover. I'm not having a physical CD, as I've mentioned. Well, I've mentioned that tonight. I'll get to that in a moment. I'm not having a physical CD. If I was, this would be the album cover of the CD, but I don't, so it's going to be the digital album cover. So yay, high definition image. This is kind of representing the idea that I was talking about before I talked about the song Living, with the birds coming out of the tree. You can kind of see, I don't know if you can see up there. And just this idea of vibrancy and life. And there's a couple of things that I'm playing around with the 4 albums. So each one has a different colour. So this one is green. If you can't tell, I'm green. This is green. There's a bit of green. And the other thing is I like to play around with is the 4 elements, the idea of the 4 elements. So this first one, life, the element that I played with was air. And that might seem like a strange choice, but the thing with air is, you can't see it and you don't really notice it until it's not there. When it's not there, it becomes very, very obvious that it's not there because everything is dying and dead and just not happening. And I think it's the same way with life. Because life is so permeating and so everywhere, it can seem hard to see sometimes until it's not there, in which case it's very obvious. So I played around with that a little bit, and she tried to incorporate that a little bit into the painting as well, and she's done a fantastic job, and it's so beautiful. And I just saw that and was like, oh, that's amazing. So yes, thank you, Jess, very, very much. Next, I want to thank the other band members who have given up so much of their time, put in the skill, and really made this sound incredible. Thank you to Eugene on the bass, to Max on the acoustic and electric, and to Mikey on the drums. These guys have been an absolute pleasure to play with, and it's been so awesome playing with these guys. It's been really, really, really good, and a lot of fun, and I'm going to miss playing with these guys, but all good things have to come to an end. A big thanks to both Kate and Josh up the back who have been doing the sound and the lights and the screen. Who've made tonight look and sound amazing, so thank you. Also thanks tonight to Mary who's been videoing tonight, so that people can look at this later on if they weren't able to make it, or if you want to look back at the songs as well. I'm not doing a CD. There is no CD. You can't get a CD afterwards and ask me to sign it for you. There isn't anything happening. It's just this event and then the video that's happening. So all the mistakes from tonight go into that video, which is awesome, but that's okay. I'm really looking forward to seeing the videos, and I want to thank her so much for what she's doing. A massive thanks also to my mum and dad for organising all the food and drink, which I'm sure you'll enjoy afterwards. There's lots of stuff over there available, so go and grab something over there after I've finished talking for a gold coin donation. I think everything is. Thanks also to Rosie, who is taking money at the door. Thank you so much. I also really want to thank Scotty, who let me use his studio here and there over both this year and last year, even though I never ended up doing a proper recording. But it was a great rehearsal space, and he was really patient with me, so thank you. There are also so many people who have travelled with me along the way to making this album. Of particular note are the guys and girls in Impart that journeyed with me that year, as well as the girls in my life group back then. But there have been so many others that have helped these songs come to life and encouraged me in so many different ways. Each of you has contributed to this story in ways perhaps you don't even know or understand. I also want to thank each one of you for coming here, so I'm not playing to an empty room, which is awesome. Thank you for listening to a guy prattle on for ages and putting your time and money into this. I really hope that you've gotten something out of tonight, and that perhaps you either understand yourself or God a little better. Finally, and most importantly, I want to thank God, because without him, none of this would be possible. Seriously, would not. So thank you very, very much. I have one last song for you all. It's called God Loves You More, and it's in a bit of a Colin Buchanan style for those who remember that era. It's just a little fun one to finish off the night. Water is worth more than what you put it in. A cookie isn't just what it says on the tin. The case won't change the sound of your guitar. A person's more important than what I think of them by far. Cause a person's worth is in God alone, not stuff or deeds or what I say on the telephone. Whether it's terrible or even it's incredible, God loves you more. He wants to be with you. And I can have a luxury car or own a yacht and travel far, have all the seasons of Doctor Who, or a signed t-shirt from Mr. Billy Who. Yeah, I could give to the poor and the needy, sell all I have, no one would call me greedy. Have all my trophies lined up in a row, but that's not what it's about, you know. Because a person's worth is in God alone, not stuff or deeds or what I say on the telephone. Whether it's terrible or if it's incredible, God loves you more. He wants to be with you. Oh yeah. God made you, and God loves you, and God wants you. Yes, the truth is that He wants to be with you, cause a person's worth is in God alone. Not stuff or deeds, what I say on the telephone. Whether it's terrible or if it's incredible, God loves you more. He wants to be with you. Thank you to everyone again for coming. There is food and drink available over there, people to talk to or pray with. If you need prayer, I will be around if you want to talk to me. And thank you again. That's it.